Okay, Rockfin, let's go. It's a new year. It's a new year. It's a new day. It's a new time. It's a new year. It's a new day. It's a new time.
Doobie-doobie-doo. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. Salvati.
Happy New Year, guys, and welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. Happy New Year. I hope you had a great New Year's Eve. I didn't do too much. Kind of just hung out here at home and watched movies and Twilight Zone, my fave. And there's different Twilight Zones. We can get into this and call in. We're going to do call in tonight. But we watched the old school Twilight Zone, and we also watched Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone, which is actually pretty good. And I'm pretty particular when it comes to remakes, but his was actually really good as well. So that's what I did New Year's Eve. What did you guys do? All right. We are going to go ahead and give shout outs to people in the chat, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. So this is the first show of the new year. I know some of you did ask me if I was going to do a top news segment for 2023. I thought about it, and I was going to have you guys vote on those news stories. And then I decided, everyone's already done that already. So I should have done that probably last week. So I decided not to do that. So my bad. But I have done that before in the past. But let's go ahead and give shout outs to people in the chat. What's going on, DC says Biden poll alarm. Super delegates is a nose ring for boneheads, donors, serf, armchair generals are whack. Greetings, CBC voters, says happy Tuesday, Sabby Sabs. Shout out to the fugitive, who's a Sabby member, says can't wait for this one. Greetings, Miguel, says peace. Shout out to Lawrence, who's also a Sabby member, says Shaka when the walls fell. Greetings, Karen, says hello to Lauren. Shout out to Mastermind, says I'll be back in 10 minutes. Save me a seat. Greetings, Hannah, says, oh, this should be good. Shout out to Jacqueline, says, hey, everyone. Giving shout outs to Miguel, Mastermind, and CBC voter there. Shout out to Ilhana, also giving a shout out to Miguel. What's going on? Shoshana says, hi, everyone. Greetings, Lorez. Hi, Sabrina, Eric, and Sabby fam. Happy New Year, y'all. Hope everyone had a fun countdown. Biden poll numbers have been way down for a while, but I wonder how Dems will discard him. Hit the like button, y'all. That's right. Hit that like button. That helps me out with the algorithm. Thank you so much. Shout out to Dana, says, evening, everybody. What's going on? Sally Walker. Greetings to my Ados family, my favorite within the diaspora, and my comrades in the struggle. Shout out to Solly. Shout out to Ravina, who's a Sabby member, says, hi, comrades. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too, Ravina. Greetings. Every time I see that picture, it's funny because I know that's what's her face from the talk show, The Real. But I guess it's because of like her outfit and her hair. She kind of reminds me of Wednesday Addams in that picture. Shout out to my comrade JB from RBN, says hello, all forehead kisses. Shout out to Les, says happy New Year, comrades. Greetings, ACAB, says hello, everyone. ACAB is also a Sabby member. Shout out to Gamer for Life says hello. Greetings Crone says hello to JB. Shout out to Luz says evening comrades. What's going on? Savvy Sabs says Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too. And shout out to Team Orca says get your ass in mama. Okay. I don't know what that's about. Shout out to Gus A says Happy New Year, Sabby, and everyone watching. Okay, we're going to go ahead and dive in. We have a lot to cover, and we are going to do call in tonight. I'm pretty sure you would want to have a discussion tonight, at least after one of these stories that you're going to hear. First and foremost, let's go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. You're out here keeping it real in these streets. Uh-oh, I don't know what happened there. Hold on, let me stop sharing. That's StreamYard. Hold on. Try it again. Keeping it real in these streets. If you are interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters. There's also Sabbies, and of course, members. Shout out to all of you guys. Thank you so much for your support. And I also want to give a special shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Dale Quayle. You know, when I saw this name, I thought about Dan Quayle. You guys remember Dan Quayle, Vice President? Dale Quayle, Mandy Zimmerly, Bunnytown, and Sam. Won't you take me to Bunnytown? Thank you guys so much. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. You take me to Bunnytown. That song's in your head now. It's actually Funky Town. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that or you're familiar with that song. Anywho, let's go ahead and share that beautiful thumbnail so you can see what we are discussing tonight. We're going to go ahead and share that. All right. Tonight we are discussing, yes, believe it or not, Epstein is back in the news. We're discussing Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton update. Dun, dun, dun. You're entering the 5th dimension. We are also going to discuss Briahna Joy Gray versus Robbie. Huge debate there. Actually, one of you sent that to me, and I missed this last week, so I figured I would cover this tonight. We're also going to discuss Yemen attacked. We're going to get into that story that broke over the weekend. And last but not least, we are discussing the Biden poll alarm. So that particular story, if you are not aware of, I actually discussed that earlier this morning on Rising. So I actually, when I'm on Rising, I take those clips and I send it out in my Substack newsletter. And I also put it in the community tab on the YouTube channel. So just letting you guys know I was there, because I've heard from people before. People are like, why don't you tell us when you appear in places? I'm like, okay. So that's there. We also discussed that this morning on Rising. I'm going to go a little bit deeper about that today. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. We're going to start with this first story here about the Houthi rebels. So if you are not aware, the United States, apparently, they're claiming that they killed 10 Houthi rebels in the Red Sea. So there has been a showdown happening in the Red Sea. The Houthi rebels, for those who are not aware, just a reminder, they are from Yemen, and they have actually been trying to prevent weapons coming from the United States and other countries going into Israel, right? And we have to remember what has happened with Yemen, a country that has been devastated by the attacks from Saudi Arabia. Those weapons were provided to Saudi Arabia from the United States government. So Yemen is really in despair. There are people starving in Yemen. And the last thing I think that they want to see is for that to happen to the Palestinian people of Gaza. So this is why they have intervened. Let's go ahead and get into this story again. The United States is claiming that they have killed 10 Houthi rebels. Let's get into this clip here from One.
Dr. Ian Ralby is a maritime security analyst with IR Consilium. Dr. Robbie is joining us live from Baltimore, Maryland. Doctor, thank you very much for making time for us, and welcome to We on Wild as One.
Thank you. I wish the circumstances were different.
Talk to us about India's mission to enhance surveillance in the Red Sea. Are there any risks involved with that mission? They say the aim is to protect the exclusive economic zone. Will India manage?
I think India has an incredibly competent Navy, and I think it will do a tremendous job in helping protect global maritime commerce as well as the commerce destined for India. But there are risks. This is obviously an evolving situation with new emerging types of threats coming out of not only the Houthis, but as you said, Somali piracy, as well as the Iranian question regarding the recent attack on the Kem Pluto, which was just on the outer edge of India's exclusive economic zone. What we saw overnight was that the attack by the Houthis against the Maersk ship that you were just talking about involved not only firing at the ship, but ultimately firing at the aircraft that were trying to defend it, leading to what has been, I believe, the first confirmed kill of any of the combatants involved. So we are seeing an escalation both in terms of the hostility and the lethality of these attacks, and India is joining the fray at a very difficult time.
I want to add here as well, let's not forget the United States government and the UK are also contemplating going to war with Yemen, as if that country has not seen enough disaster at the hands of the US government already.
Doctor, let's talk about the Red Sea Force and the whole new war at sea. Do you think the new frontier poses a new challenge for the US?
It does. It poses a new challenge for all of us. And one of the difficulties is that, as we said, this is an adaptive threat. We are seeing an escalation almost daily. As the Houthis have tasted global relevance, they're going to keep fighting for it. And so if the U.S. is able to, along with its partners, shoot down all the missiles and drones and other aircraft inbound for commercial shipping, the Houthis will find new ways to attack vessels. And they have many different weapons in their arsenal, both literally and metaphorically. They can find new ways of attacking shipping and continue to wreak havoc on global maritime commerce. They are going to continue to find ways to be relevant. And that is really what their focus is at this point. Unfortunately, this started as a protest regarding the Gaza-Israel situation, but it has evolved into something that is totally distinct at this point. And so we have to treat it as an inherent threat in and of itself.
Let's pause here for just a second, because there's something I want to mention as well. Notice how he's talking about the situation. He's saying we have to treat the Houthis as a threat. But the current ongoing threat is coming from the United States government. They're the ones that are supplying weapons to these countries to destroy other countries. Let's not forget again, the United States government actually supplied arms to Saudi Arabia for Saudi Arabia to then in turn use those weapons against the people in Yemen. And Yemen has been devastated ever since. But here they are speaking as though, well, the Houthis are the problem and they're attacking us. You are coming into their waters. This is their area. This is their domain. I want you to put yourself in their shoes. How would we feel if ships were coming from another country to attack the United States government? How would you feel about that? But the US, again, they want to be able to make this point that they have a right to be there and they have a right to send these weapons. The United States government has become complicit as part of a genocide. There's no easier way to say it. Sorry, but there just isn't. And the other neighboring countries, they expect those countries to just sit back and let it happen. It could be them next time. Who's to say that the US government isn't going to do this to them, isn't going to send weapons to another country or to Israel in the future to have Israel attack them? They're got to think about themselves here as well. This is their home. This is their domain. We don't really belong there.
How easy or difficult is it for the US to crush Houthi control over the Red Sea?
Well, unfortunately, the maritime space is large and it involves lots of different moving parts. And so the extent to which chaos can be wrought on the maritime domain is pretty simple. Somali pirates with low technology did it for years. It took a major effort in terms of coordination between shipping and navies in order to be able to abate that threat. And while that was abated for a number of years, it is resurging now. And we are also seeing this much more sophisticated, armed, state-backed effort to really attack shipping, not just go after financial gain through holding ships and individuals for ransom. And so the extent to which continued attacks and continued threats to global maritime commerce could be brought by not only the Houthis, but the Somalis, the Iranians and others is extreme. And so that's something for which every Navy on Earth needs to be vigilant. But at the moment, it is clear that there is a desire to maintain this pace and escalate it as we go into the new year. And I think we're going to have a very difficult start to that year with regard to trying to protect our global economy.
Guys, pay attention to what he's saying here, okay? Pay attention to what this guy is saying. He is defending commerce. That's his main concern, not the Palestinians who are being killed. His main concern is commerce. This guy is up here defending capitalism. Forget about all those people that are being killed in Gaza. We got to protect commerce, damn it. This is exactly what he's doing. We got to protect our economy. We got to think about the financial ramifications here. This is what we really got to focus on. Focus on the money, people. Totally leaving out the fact that the Houthis are trying to prevent more casualties in Gaza. That is what they're fighting against. In other words, this dude sounds like a cop. Something I want you to think about. Look at what he's defending. Let's protect the money, financial interest. Let's protect commerce. Let's protect capitalism. That is exactly what he is doing. He doesn't care about those people that are being killed. The Houthis, on the other hand, said, I'm the captain now. Now, this comes about at a time, and I'm not sure if everyone has seen this because I know I've missed a couple of days here, but South Africa has actually stepped forward and they are willing to also stand up to the state of Israel. It's not just the Houthis. South Africa has come forward and they have filed a case of genocide against the state of Israel. Let's get into that story. I'm going to explain to you how all of this is connected. And I think that Israel actually may have a reason to be concerned. Let's get into this from Al Jazeera.
I'm joined now in the studio by Sultan Barakat, Professor of Public Policy at Hamad bin Khalifa University. Good to have you with us again, Sultan.
Thanks.
Let's just talk about the decision by the High Court. Are we now looking at a real collision between the legal fraternity and courts and the government?
Yes, I mean, it's a major setback, particularly for Netanyahu, because he's pushed really hard to try and introduce these changes in the legal system within Israel, whereby the Supreme Court more or less become less independent and under the thumb of the government. And of course, Israeli population citizens have rejected this, and there were all these waves of protest and so on. And I think it will make a qualitative difference to them. But for the Palestinians, it won't make a huge difference because the Palestinians are still governed under emergency occupation laws that the justice brought by the Supreme Council does not really apply to them. I think it's just another setback for Netanyahu, and it will probably help increase the questioning within the Israeli society of what he's been up to, that this is not the only faulty decision that he's backed. This war is another one.
Do you think he'll put that on the
Pause here for just a second. Something that I want to add. So again, Israel actually has to appear before the ICJ to defend accusations of genocide from South Africa. Now, first of all, shout out to South Africa for keeping it real. This is actually something that if the US government wasn't in Israel's back pocket, they would have the balls to do this too. right? But they're not going to do that because they're in the back pocket of the state of Israel. So they actually do have to appear. And Netanyahu is basically, he reminds me of a mob boss. Like Netanyahu is a straight up gangster. Let's keep it real. Netanyahu doesn't think that the law applies to him or to the state of Israel. But this is moving forward.
The back burner while the war in Gaza takes priority at the moment, or do you think he'll bring it alongside it? Because if he does, the public themselves in Israel and have a problem of, coming back out onto the streets again while they're still supporting the government on a war in Gaza.
I don't think they will be able to come up on the streets in the masses they did in the past, because as long as the status of war persists, which he has introduced, as we said maybe in the past, is the first time Israel declares war since 1973. They invaded Lebanon without declaring war. It was always special operations. But by declaring war, he has changed the whole mechanism. The governance is in the hand of the mini cabinet, and they don't really have to follow all the checks and balances that usually exist in the system. And he can suspend a lot of that protest against him until the war in Gaza is over, and he has, until he declares an end, a formal end to the war.
But that's certainly not ending in terms of the pressure that the government and, of course, Netanyahu face right now, because they have decided that they will attend the International Criminal Justice hearings, a petition by South Africa accusing Israel of genocide specifically on this issue of Gaza and the war on Gaza. They could
pause here for a second. Diana, to answer your question, what took so long to get the ICJ involved? So you have to invoke them. You have to actually invoke the ICJ. And so South Africa, this is actually something that Cornel West actually called for. He said the U.S. government needs to invoke the genocide rule from the ICJ against the state of Israel. Of course, obviously, the U.S. isn't going to do that, but South Africa did. And who else better to do this than South Africa? Because South Africa, obviously, they know what apartheid is. They know about oppression. They know about occupation. They have firsthand experience with this. And some are actually saying that the apartheid that's happening in Israel and what's happening to the Palestinian people is actually worse than what happened in South Africa. And to that point, I want to ask people, you need to ask yourself, why is it that the same politicians that can praise Nelson Mandela for fighting against apartheid in South Africa are not willing to speak up against the apartheid that's happening in the state of Israel? I'll answer that question for you. That's because if you follow the money, a lot of these politicians are in the back pocket of the state of Israel, whether it's through organizations like AIPAC or J Street. They have already decided to be loyal to another country. And let's look at it like this. Let's say you're actually on the side of Israel. Let's say that you are. Most people who watch the show are not, but let's say that you are. Okay. Do you think that it is fair for a United States politician to be loyal to another country, to a foreign entity? Because I don't. If you are a representative of this country, you are supposed to speak for and represent Americans. You're supposed to protect the people in this country. You're supposed to advocate for the people in this country. You are not supposed to go against the people in this country and advocate for another country, especially one that's an apartheid state. Let's continue.
Avoid not attending these hearings, could they?
No, first, as a member of the United Nations, and as we were saying before, they're very keen on being counted as a state. Addressing the court with respect is important for all states. And obviously, because South Africa approached under the Genocide Convention, of which Israel is a signature, one of the early signatories to the convention from August 1949, these two factors make it impossible for them to reject the court hearing as it happens. Now, I think the issue becomes on how they defend themselves and to what extent South Africa and a very important international community is going to support South Africa in building the case and the evidence, including the non-governmental agencies, UN agencies, all the people who've witnessed what was going on over the last 3 months.
how difficult is it going to be to prove the case? Because legal loopholes can always exist, can't they? Are there loopholes here that Israel can use?
I mean, there's the only loophole is the fact that it's been at war. It has the right to defend itself. They have done every possible measure to reduce casualties. That's what I think what the Israeli defense is going to be. But
so Israel will most likely try to defend itself at the ICJ by basically saying that they are at war, right? So they can say, well, these casualties have happened because it's war, which is what they've basically been saying all along. I sincerely hope that South Africa has enough evidence. I'm pretty sure that they do, but that they actually have video evidence of Israel implementing terror on the Palestinians in certain cases where it actually was not a part of this war. And I'm talking about video footage that a lot of us have seen on social media that has taken place in Gaza and in the West Bank that happened way before this war, how they have terrorized the Palestinian people, how they have chosen to try to starve the Palestinian people. The UN actually declared this to be a humanitarian crisis years ago. This is not new, but that is what Israel is going to try to do. They're going to try to defend themselves at the ICJ by saying that they are at war. I think that South Africa will be prepared for this, but you have to understand that South Africa is going to be fighting against an incredibly powerful state that is backed by US politicians. But according to The Hill, Netanyahu, of course, is rejecting claims of genocide. So listen to this. This is from The Hill. It says Netanyahu rejects claims accusing Israel of genocide in Gaza. So this was New Year's Eve. Of course, he's going to reject them. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday pushed back against claims that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, calling such accusations false after South Africa filed a case against Israel at the UN's top court. So all I can say to that is that if I were South Africa, to please have the video footage of interviews with Netanyahu and also with other minister advisors from the state of Israel, where they have made statements that they don't want the Palestinian people there, where they have made statements about the greater Israel plan, which Netanyahu has done in front of the UN. I sincerely hope they have that evidence, because that proves that the plan was always to push the Palestinian people out. And there's something else I got to tell you about this that I never mentioned on the show, and it was brought to my attention the other day. Has anybody looked into other resources that Israel needs? And I'm talking about resources that actually help their economy. Because we've talked about the gas and oil along the Gaza coast, and that could be a reason why they want that land. But did you know that Israel also makes a huge profit from wine? Did you know that the grapes, apparently, this was reported 2021, the grapes apparently have not been doing so well in Israel? And if that is the case, then that means the plan is to take the land, to change the soil, to farm the land, to continue to profit by making wine. Look it up. I kid you not. Look it up. It goes on to say, I would like to say a word about South Africa's false accusation that Israel is committing genocide. No, South Africa, it is not we who have come to perpetrate genocide. It is Hamas. Okay, let's compare the number of casualties, right? First, they said it was 1,400 people that Hamas killed at the festival. They actually later on changed that number to 1,200 because apparently the IDF killed some of their own people. The IDF also killed 3 hostages that were waving a white flag, again, their own people. Compare that to, what is it now, 25,000? That number will continue to increase because all of the bodies have not been found. 25,000 civilians that have been killed in Gaza. How can you say that it's the other way around? You can't unless you're a blatant liar. He goes on to say Hamas would kill us all if they could. Netanyahu's remarks were in response to South Africa launching a case at the UN's International Court of Justice last week that accuses Israel of carrying out genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza. Netanyahu argued that Israel's military is acting as morally as possible, that's BS, and doing everything to avoid harming civilians as it wages an offensive against Hamas in Gaza. But word on the street is that Netanyahu is actually a little bit concerned about this appearance. Now, when is this going to happen? This will happen next Thursday. Pay attention to this, guys, because this is coming up very soon. Israel goes on trial for the genocide it committed in Gaza. Israel will face accusations of genocide in the International Criminal Court, the ICC, which has scheduled a hearing next Thursday for South Africa's lawsuit accusing Israel of genocide in Gaza. Israel has confirmed that it will appear in the Netherlands next week to defend against the charges. And there he is right there. When we get into this next story, I just want you to remember that with all the fuss that Joe Biden and his administration and Democrats have in this country about the dangerous right wing in this country, I just want to remind you the U.S. government has no problem funding the right wing. They're doing it right now. They're funding Netanyahu. They're funding Israel. And I mentioned this earlier on Rising this morning as well. The United States government gives $3.8 billion to Israel every year. That was before the war started in October 7th. Giving them health care, giving them free college, the same things that they don't want to give you in this country. Now, no matter what side of the aisle you stand politically, I want you to think about this for a second. You may have been against Medicare for all. You may have said, I don't want the government in my life. Some of you feel that way. You may have been against free college. Some of you said it's not fair. I had to pay to go. I get it. I had to pay to go too. But how do you feel about the U.S. government sending billions of dollars to another country for those individuals to have those rights and to have those privileges, but they don't want to give them to you? Something to think about. Let's go to some of the comments in the chat. Shout out to Not So Blue Bear for the $10 super sticker. Thank you so much. Lana says hair color is pretty. Thank you. I went a little bit darker. It was actually even darker than this, but I did tone it down over the weekend. Actually, I didn't do it. The hairstylist did it because I can't do this. I can't do this. Peace Dove said, you killed it on Rising. Thank you so much. Thanks. I never know if I really do well on Rising because they're short segments. Like you have a short amount of time to say what you need to say. And every time I'm on Rising, like after that, I'm always like, damn, I forgot to say this. I always forget to say something, right? But thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'll go ahead and get the comment on Rockfin and we will dive into the next story. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Dave. Thanks to the Sabs show for the coverage. And thank you, JVB, for the tip. Yes, Sabby and Eric T. Thank you so much. Thank you. Plump shirt. All right. We're going to get into this next story here. We've talked over the past couple of months about Joe Biden losing support. I talked before about Joe Biden losing support among African-American voters in this country. But now Joe Biden is now not just losing support among the African-American voters, but also Hispanic voters. It turns out that Donald Trump is now beating Joe Biden with the Hispanic community in this country. Go figure. I bet a lot of people didn't expect that to happen. Let's go ahead and get into this story here about Joe Biden's recent polls. And then I'm going to give you a breakdown as to why these particular groups would be feeling some kind of way against Joe Biden. And there's one issue in particular that I think they do have in common. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here from News Nation.
Back to you now on your Tuesday morning, a new year, but the same problems are persisting for President Trump when it comes to the polls. The latest showing President Biden losing support among some key groups who turned out for him back in 2020.
Yeah, they're tuning out now. Our Alina Shirazi is joining us from Washington, D.C. to break down all the data. Alina, good morning.
Adrian and Marky, good morning to you. Well, a new poll is sounding the alarm for Democrats as the numbers show President Joe Biden trailing behind former President Donald Trump. The new USA Today Suffolk University poll shows 2024 Republican candidate Donald Trump leading by 3% when it comes to overall support.
Pause right there. See it? So Joe Biden has 34% among Hispanic voters. Donald Trump is now pulled ahead of him with 39%.
When it came to Hispanic voters surveyed, former President Trump also earned 39% compared to Biden's 34%. Biden has also seen a decline with voters under the age of 35 and among Black voters. The president's numbers have decreased from 2020 to 2023 by nearly 25%.
Pause right here. Biden's support among Black voters in 2020, you will see at that point, we're like 80. He had like 87% of the African-American vote is down to like 63% now in 2024. But I want to remind you again, was that really support for Joe Biden in 2020 or was it against Donald Trump, right? Was it like not, I'm going to go against Donald Trump. I'm not necessarily a fan of Joe Biden, but I don't want Donald Trump again. So we're going to support him in 2020. How do you go from 87% support among African-American voters, you're Democrat president, and you drop down to like 63%? I'm going to explain that in a minute.
When it comes to Black voters, we spoke with a Democratic strategist who says if these numbers continue to persist within the African-American community, President Biden won't make it in 2024.
If those numbers persist, the president's not likely to win re-election. And given Donald Trump's legislation, the First Step Act, and his push to really do symbolic gestures in terms of trying to gain support for the African-American community, he's really chipped away at the president's base. And that really poses problems for Democrats.
And the Democratic strategist we spoke with does say representation matters at all levels of the spectrum, especially when it comes to community outreach. Marky?
All right, Alina Shirazi live in D.C. for us this morning. Thanks so much. Thank you for.
Let's pause here. Okay, so let's talk about something for a second. The gentleman there referred to it. I forget what he called it. I would have called it virtue signaling. That's what the Democratic Party has been doing in reference to African-American voters. There's been a lot of virtue signaling, right? Like they don't really plan to do anything for us. Meanwhile, they have planned to do things for other groups because other groups in this country have actually made concessions and gotten concessions for their votes. The African-American voters, we have not. But let me explain to you why these two groups are connected. There's one issue in particular, immigration. And I'm going to explain to you why. African-American voters, if you have been paying attention to what's happening in Chicago and also New York City, African-American voters have been very vocal that they are not happy that Democrat leaders in their particular cities are allowing migrants to come in and they're giving migrants more benefits than they've given to African Americans who grew up in those cities, who are legal citizens here. Don't believe me? I want to show you something that just happened in Chicago. Now, this is from Phil Scott. Let me make sure I got this right. Hold on. I want to make sure I got the right one because he's on multiple channels. Listen to Phil Scott. But this is on the African Diaspora News channel. So he has he's on that channel, but he also has his own channel. So I just want to make sure I got that correct. Listen to what he said just happened in Chicago. And then I think you'll understand at least why African-American voters might be a little pissed off. Listen to this.
Recently, Chicago has done something else. You know, the Democrat Party that a lot of Black people in Chicago voted for, unfortunately, they are housing migrants in places to stay now, and they're paying their rent. Let's go ahead and roll that.
Welcome back. We are learning much more about the migrant crisis right here in Chicago. I spoke with Christina Passioni-Zayas, the city's first deputy chief of staff. She gave me insight on how the crisis is impacting the city and the state financially. Already this week, 41 buses have rolled into Chicago, and that means there are now 11,000 migrants living in shelters. 4,000 are still sleeping on police station floors and staying at the airport. Now, this is really startling. 30% of migrants here in Chicago are children. Majority of them are attending Chicago public schools. Right now, the state is footing the bill for what they call temporary housing, apartments and homes that are rented out for migrants. The state is paying on the high end $9,000 in rental assistance over a 6-month period of time.
$9,000 in rental assistance for migrants that have come into Chicago over 6 months. Now, here's the problem. When we look at the homelessness population in this country, African Americans are like 40% of the homelessness population, yet we're like 13% of the national population. There are Black homeless people in Chicago not being offered the same benefit. And it's not just Chicago. We're going to get into Thursday night. We're going to break down what's happening in California, what Gavin Newsom has decided to do. But they're giving housing to them, paying their rent. Now, I don't blame the migrants. I don't blame them. Some people do. I don't blame them. Because the reason why they're coming here in the first damn place is because of foreign policy decisions that have been made by our government. Because our government has destroyed these countries economically, whether it's been through sanctions, whether it's been through stealing their resources, imperialism, destroying these countries, overthrowing their leaders, their political leaders, interfering in their elections, leaving these countries in an economic despair. That's why the people are leaving, and that's why they are coming this way. So when we talk about the problems, it's important to call out the why. Why is it happening in the first place? And it's important to mention the solution. The solution is for the U.S. government to stop intervening in all of these countries, stop getting involved in their political elections, stop overthrowing their leaders, stop implementing sanctions on every country that disagrees with you on one little thing, or even if they don't disagree with you. Stop hurting and penalizing these countries economically, and this issue goes away. Now, this is not to say that people still won't want to come to the U.S. They will. Some people want to have the American dream. We have a process for that. But it has now gotten to the point where migrants that are coming into the country are being treated better than Black people in these cities that grew up there, and they're giving nothing at all. And we'll talk about it. We're going to go there. There has been nothing that this country has done economically to try to atone for slavery, Jim Crow, the crime bill, redlining, all of these things that were implemented to prevent passing down generational wealth or even accumulating generational wealth for most Black people in this country. And I don't want to hear, well, Oprah got there, so can you. Oprah sold out to a lot of people, okay? My grandma would say Oprah sold her soul. Oprah sold out to a lot of people to get to where she is. You don't get there just by being good at your job, because there's a lot of people that are good at their job that don't get a raise, that don't get promoted. It's all about whose ass you kiss and who you step on to get to the top, okay? And Oprah did that. So please stop using Oprah Winfrey as the example. Stop using athletes as an example. Not everyone knows how to be a LeBron James. Not everyone can be in the NBA. Most people won't join the NFL. These are just facts, not my opinion. But when it comes to other groups, time and time again, this country has shown us that they are willing to bend over backwards to help everybody but African Americans. Now, it was one thing if this was happening under a Republican administration, right? Because African Americans wouldn't expect that help. But this is happening under Joe Biden's presidency. The guy who said that he was going to forgive HBCU student loans didn't happen. The guy who said, if you vote for Warnock and Ossoff, we'll give you those $2,000 checks. Then had the audacity to shortchange the people. Couldn't even give the $2,000. The guy who co-wrote the crime bill turns around and gives the police more money. And so we have now reached a point in this country where more and more African Americans are calling out the pandering and the virtue signaling that has continued to come from the Democratic Party, and they don't want to deal with it anymore. Let's continue.
With that comes help moving in and a starter kit to furnish the apartment.
That rent lasts for 6 months, and ideally people would have started their legal process, secured legal work authorization, and then be able to sustain that apartment. And so the cost, or I guess the payment towards the landlord, is based on market rate. It's based on the configuration of the apartment, how many rooms, where it's located, all of those things. And so it kind of varies from place to place.
Now, to a lot of our brothers and sisters in Chicago who, struggling right now, who maybe some of you struggling to pay rent, some of you probably could be even facing eviction. They've been record evictions all over the country. Has the city of Chicago offered to pay $9,000 toward your rent for 6 months?
That is a good question that he's asking there. For those of you who are listening, has your city given you an apartment? Have they offered to pay thousands of dollars to help you have an apartment? Notice the woman said in the video, she said they're even helping them furnish the apartments. Anybody, did your city, your state help you furnish your apartment? Nobody helped me furnish an apartment. No one gave me an apartment. And every time I had to come up with 3 months rent. They don't have to do that. They're bypassing all the steps that all of us have to go through. Now, again, don't hate on them. It's not their fault. It's our country's fault. If we would have stayed out of their economic situation, stayed out of meddling in their country, this would not happen. So it's almost like the U.S. has a debt that was owed, but the U.S. also has a debt that was owed to us. And they have not tried to pay it.
I mean, seriously. I mean, a lot of you are taxpayers, and they're not. This is what they say. They get a starter kit. So basically, they're getting furnished. They're getting everything. Now they come over to this country. They didn't vote. No, the Democrats come to you and say, vote for us, vote, right? And then you come out and vote, and then you get nothing out the vote. It's not that voting don't work. It's just the people you're voting for is working against you.
Working against you. Think about that.
They don't prioritize you. Now, on a podcast, we covered that without the black vote, the Democrats would never win. They would never win an election if black people say, I'm not voting for you. Even if they had the white vote, the Hispanic vote, and Asian vote, they have shown they cannot win elections without the black vote. And I said in that podcast, that's where our power lies politically, is that we should collectively punish the Democrat Party for what they're doing. There's a lot of homeless people right now in Chicago. It is cold right now in Chicago. It's not snowing yet, but it's cold without looking at the weather reports over there. And you have why isn't our homeless population being put up in apartments and homes and all of that? Why are they getting a starter pack? What about suffering people, low income people in Chicago who are citizens of the America and also residents of Chicago? Why aren't they getting that?
Now, pause for a second and let's think about something. Everyone needs to start asking these questions. Why is our government willing to help another group instead of helping us? Let's think about it. I didn't see our government do this for anybody else in this country. Anybody else that grew up in this country, I didn't see them do this. Now, why would they do this for the migrant? So people say, well, some of these cities, they declared themselves to be a sanctuary city. And so Governor Abbott has been busing migrants that come in through the border to these cities. Okay, you can have your beef with Governor Abbott. Again, take it back to the foreign policy decisions that this country has made. That being said, though, the question is, why hasn't it been done for citizens in this country? Because when we made the claim before during 2020, everybody should have housing in this country. We were called radical. We were called extremists. Oh, those crazy lefties, get out of here. But they have no problem giving housing to people who are not citizens of this country. And not even just that, but these are people that came over illegally. So they're willing to give housing to all of them, but they're not willing to give housing to all of you who grew up in this country or who are legal citizens of this country and pay taxes in this country, whether you like the left or not. Think about that. Now, why would they be willing to do that? Could have something to do with the labor force in this country, because they know, especially a lot of these companies, there's been a lot of strikes over the past year and a half. They know that they can pay them less and they'll do the work and they won't ask for the benefits that we're striking for. That could be the part of the problem. Either way, people need to speak up about it. Again, this is happening under Joe Biden's administration. Let's continue a little bit more here.
Now, see, black folks, I know you're suing out there in the South Shore region. You're suing to stop them from putting migrants in your area. I know they protested about putting migrants in the Munson Park field house, but y'all gonna have to start getting together and filing lawsuits to get these programs, because these programs are discriminatory in nature. And let me explain to you why it's discriminatory. If you're not going to pay everybody's rent, then you pay no rent. It's just that simple. You can't say we're going to pay rent for these people who aren't even taxpayers of the city of Chicago. They didn't vote for Brandon Johnson at all. So Brandon Johnson and the Democrats are prioritizing the migrants over the citizens of that city and the taxpayer.
And that's what you need to take home with you folks. This shouldn't even be, like, I want to be very clear. This shouldn't even be a left-right issue. This is a humanity issue. And you need to ask yourself, why do you continue to go out every election cycle and stand in line to vote for these politicians, and they don't do anything for you? Nothing for you. And I'm not telling you to go vote for the Republicans either. They ain't gonna do shit for you either. That's why I'm telling you to leave the freaking system. But the thing is, most African Americans in this country do not vote for the Republican Party. Most African Americans vote for the Democratic Party, and they have given us nothing. And I said it earlier this morning. This country gave reparations to Japanese Americans that were part of the Japanese internment camps. They haven't given you anything, not a dime. And that actually happened under Ronald Reagan. But you bring up that reparations should be given to American descendants of slavery, by the way, which is based on lineage. You got to clear this up, based on lineage, not race. You bring that up and you're told, stop being divisive. Was it divisive when it was done for other groups? We got politicians out here giving $3.8 billion a year to Israel, but you can't ask them for reparations. Listen to some of the voters in Chicago at a meeting here. This is also from the African Diaspora Network. Listen to this. Black Chicago residents threaten to turn Illinois red. Listen to this. Because of this situation.
To be a freedom fighter, to always be on the right side of people. But one thing I have realized that Jim Crow has messed us up so bad that we want funding and campaign donations, and once we get into office, we somehow forget where we come from. And I'm not talking about you, but I look at our other elected officials, how they allow MMS to get a bruise at city council. And as I came in here, I wasn't going to say anything. But when I walked in here and I seen the city of Chicago ticketing all of the legal people in here to voice their concern about the illegal people. That's not right.
Who got ticketed?
No. The city of Chicago, when I walked in, the booth people and the ticket people out there writing up all the black people. So what I'm saying is,
we paid for all the parking.
Yeah, but well, fix it with the city. This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying, dear brother. I'm sick of it. And I'm sick of these Uncle Tom Negro elected officials that the only thing they figure CTU and the rest of these unions gonna keep them in office.
He called them Uncle Toms.
The first person that stopped the bus of the illegal migrants in Wadsworth, and I won't be the last. So what I'm saying, dear brother, look, I'm uncensored. I have not took a grant nor a dollar, so they can't control me. I'm a free black man. So what I'm saying to you is, what are we going to do about reparations?
So you see what's happening? Again, these are questions. You can watch the entire video for this one. It is on the African Diaspora News Network. Black Chicago residents threaten to turn Illinois red over prioritizing migrants. And again, for me, I can't speak for everybody else, but for me, my problem is not with migrants who are coming here. My problem is with this country and the decisions that this government has made. The fact that they have overlooked other people in this country, particularly African Americans in this country. We've been overlooked time and time again, and still come out and loyally support the Democratic Party. And when I told you guys, after Bernie 2020, that was it for me. That was my last rodeo. I mean, that was my last rodeo. There is not one politician that can run through either one of these parties that is going to get me to change my mind and come out and support them, because both of those parties are corporate. You have to walk away from this system. But the problem is the media has a lot of people brainwashed. They got you out there thinking, oh no, but you sound like a Trump. You sound like a Republican. Oh no, but people might get Trump. What are you getting now? The point is, none of them are going to help you. And don't come to me and tell me you don't have another choice. You got other choices. There are multiple people that are running third party independent that are actually care about, advocated for, and have been activists in reference to African Americans in this country and reparations, that have actually fought for these types of things for a good part of their life. So stop coming to me telling me that this is all you got as a choice. It's not all you got as a choice. Stop letting mainstream media make you believe that lie. Now, Brandon Johnson, who's the mayor of Chicago, he was actually on Face the Nation about this issue earlier this week. Let's hear part of this.
For more on how immigration is affecting communities across the U.S., we turn now to two Democratic mayors, Chicago's Brandon Johnson and Denver's Mike Johnston. Gentlemen, welcome to Face the Nation.
Good morning.
Thank
you for having us.
Thanks for joining us. And Mr. Mayor of Chicago, I want to put to you a question about what seems to have developed overnight. There are reports of a plane from Texas landing in Chicago carrying more migrants that arrived around 1 a.m. I'm wondering if Texas officials gave you any heads up. Who's on the plane? What happens next?
Well, what we have is clearly an international and federal crisis that local governments are being asked to subsidize. And this is unsustainable. None of our local economies are positioned to be able to carry on such a mission. And what we have attempted to do is to create structure and some coordination around this humanitarian crisis. And unfortunately, the governor of Texas, Governor Abbott, is determined to continue to sow seeds of chaos. And last night and several nights before, a number of buses continue to arrive in the city of Chicago and throughout the country without any coordination. And now he's taken on this very dangerous task of placing individuals on airplanes and flying them into our various cities.
So my question is, with this that is happening, with Governor Abbott sending migrants into what they would call the sanctuary cities, where is the president of the United States? You see, this is part of the reason why Joe Biden is losing support from African-American voters and Hispanic voters, because of this particular issue. There are other things too, don't get me wrong, unfulfilled campaign promises, but this issue has become a really hot button because, again, people are like, what the hell? You're doing all of this for them, but you haven't done anything for us, and we're from here. So this issue, Joe Biden is silent. All we've heard from Joe Biden is that he is building onto Trump's border wall, which, again, if you're a Democrat, you should look at that and raise eyebrows as well. Weren't you upset that Donald Trump was building the wall in the first damn place? Where's all those people who were crying and had tears in their eyes when they said the kids were in the cages when Trump was president? Kids are still in the cages. I don't see anybody crying now. Shouldn't you be upset for the hypocrisy that Joe Biden has in reference to this particular issue, that he's doing the same thing? Where is the president on this issue? He assigned the border to Kamala Harris. Where has Kamala Harris been on this particular issue? Why haven't they figured out a solution to this problem? You know why? Because then they have to address, why are they coming here in the first place? And then they have to go through the facts, which is the fact that the U.S. government destroyed these countries. That's why. Now we're going to go on a little bit more here, and then I want to show you something else in reference to 2024 election.
It's certainly a matter of not just of our national security, but it's the type of chaos that this governor is committed to administering.
Mr. Mayor of Denver, to be clear here, I know that you have looked at New York and Chicago making decisions to restrict bus arrivals. Are you trying to take measures in your city to restrict them from even arriving in the first place?
No, all we want is a system that is humanitarian for both the new folks that are arriving and for our cities and our city employees. And so we understand there will be an inflow. We have already had 35,000 migrants arrive to Denver. We've successfully helped them integrate into the country here. What we don't want is people arriving at 2 o'clock in the morning at a city and county building with women and children outside in 10-degree weather and no support. And so we want buses here to do what every other bus does, which is land at a bus station and a bus stop and hours when we can have staff there to receive them and to direct them towards services. And so we understand the flow is coming. We just want it to be coordinated and in a humanitarian way, which we think makes it effective for the city and for those.
Where's the president? 35,000 people have come in. 35,000. So this is the big pet peeve with some of the Black and Hispanic voters. This is part of the reason why some of them are very upset with Joe Biden. Now, I want to show you what it looks like going forward, the 2024 election. Of course, MSNBC has their dude in the khaki pants, Steve. He's going to go ahead and give a rundown of that. But I want to be very clear about this because some people, they don't like to talk about this issue. And again, I'm saying again, do not blame the migrants. This really is not on them. They're trying to get away from the turmoil in their countries that was caused by the U.S. government. But the U.S. government is going to have to deal with this because this is crazy. Going into 2024, what does it look like for Joe Biden?
Let's turn now to NBC's Steve Kornacki. As promised, he's over at the big board for a breakdown of what we can expect in next year's presidential election.
All right, well, we are approaching Once every 4 years, the big one, the presidential election year 2024, almost upon us. So let's take a look here at how politics have kind of, and how the election of 2024 has kind of taken shape in 23, and the big questions we're looking at as 2024 kicks off. So first of all, who's going to be the Republican nominee, presumably against Joe Biden? At the start of 2023, this seemed like a very up in the air question. You can see the trend line for the candidates. And remember, at the start of 23, Republicans were coming off a pretty rough midterm. Candidates who'd been closely aligned with Donald Trump had lost key races in 2022. At the start of 23, Ron DeSantis was running pretty close in the poll average to Donald Trump. And then look what happened. It just exploded here for Trump and went the other way for DeSantis. What happened right around here in the calendar? That was when the first indictment of Trump came down, the one from the Manhattan district attorney. It almost seems to have triggered a rally around Trump effect among Republicans. And that's just held all year through all the legal drama and everything else that's happened. And here we are at the end of the year. And in the average, Trump just, open lengths ahead of Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and Ramaswamy, and Christie too, for that matter. So we'll see in the early contests if any of those candidates are going to have a shot here to beat Trump. They're probably going to have to make some noise, whether it's DeSantis in Iowa. He seems to really be trying to plant his flag there. Haley in New Hampshire. She's gotten some encouraging polling news there. Can one of them beat Trump in one of these early states? Of course, Haley's South Carolina will play a key role among the early states as well. Can one of them beat Trump in the early states and make this a race? That is what we're going to find out in the first 6 weeks or so of 2024. How about the Democratic end of things? Joe Biden seems poised to be the Democratic nominee. What kind of year has he had politically? Well, again, he started 2023 coming off those good midterms for Democrats, and his approval rating, 46-50, wasn't that bad, but it's taken a hit this year. And as we start to close out the year, our final NBC poll had him at just 40% approval, 57% disapproval. How does this compare to past presidents entering their re-election year? Here you can see it. Here's the 40 that we have Biden at right now. These are all the final polls heading into the election year, re-election year that NBC conducted. You just see all the recent presidents. Look, Trump got beat in 2020. He was at 44 heading into his re-election year. Bush Sr. got beat in 92. He was at 52 and heading south rapidly.
Pause. Everyone, look at these numbers. These were the polls of presidential approval ratings before re-election. George H.W. Bush had 52% and he lost to Bill Clinton. He had 52%. Bill Clinton had 51%. He won. George W. Bush had 51%. He won. Barack Obama had 46%. He won. Donald Trump had 44%. He lost. And Joe Biden has 40%. Joe Biden has the lowest approval rating of all of these presidents, going all the way back to the 90s. This is insane. So for people who tell us like, oh, you guys are just being harsh on Biden, he's actually done a great job. Really? Look at the comparison to all the other presidents. How you get low? What? How does he get lower than Donald Trump? Lower than Donald Trump.
There, but you see how that number compares. That's the lowest. That's the lowest in an NBC poll for an incumbent facing a re-election here. But it is a tight race when you poll Biden versus Trump. At the start of the year, in the average of the polls nationally, Biden had a 2-point advantage. Now, at the end of the year, it is Trump who, on average, has a 2-point advantage here. It's a very, very close race, obviously. And what are the concerns of voters? The dynamics we'll be talking about if this race does materialize. Joe Biden, of course, is the oldest president ever at this point. And his his fitness, his age, about 3 in 4 voters in our poll say it's a major or moderate concern. Big thing in 24 is going to be Trump's legal situation. Are there convictions? What goes on in the courtroom for him? 62% right now say that's a major or moderate concern for them. Would that number change if there's a conviction? Would that number change based on how these cases start to sort out? Big question, obviously, we'll be following well into 2024. And this is interesting, too.
Let me show you what he did. He skipped over that bottom part. So let me go back and read it. Okay. They probably told him not to talk about this one. But this part here, Biden's awareness or involvement in Hunter's business dealing, that was at 60%, things that people are concerned about. Notice he didn't say that one. Okay. He also skipped over Trump's age and fitness because he doesn't want to show you. Hold on. I'm trying to show the number. He doesn't want to show you that Trump's age and fitness was 47% of people concerned compared to Joe Biden's 74%. So you guys see the way that mainstream media, how they try to create the narrative. Notice how they skip over certain things, but that's okay. We got eyes on here, boo. So pay attention to those things. And I would also say, in reference to age, and notice they added fitness in there, in reference to age and fitness, what it's really about is obviously, particularly with Joe Biden, people are concerned about his cognitive decline, which is very apparent. If you've seen him in interviews, if you've seen him at press conferences, we've been paying attention to this. So that is very apparent and people are aware of that, but they don't want to use those words that I just used. They want to say age and fitness. Interesting.
How these cases start to sort out. Big question, obviously, will be following well into 2024. And this is interesting, too. Just there is clearly what this ballot question is showing you here is matching Trump against just a generic Democrat. Trump loses sizably. Matching Biden against a generic Republican. Biden loses by double digits. It's just showing you broadly there's not a big appetite for Trump versus Biden, even though it seems that each party, at least as we enter 2024, is poised to go in that direction. And that leads to this final graphic here, a poll from the Wall Street Journal recently. They included a bunch of third-party options, and against Biden and Trump, they added up to 17%. That's a big question heading into 2024. Is there going to be a...
Look at this. Notice that they have to mention the third-party candidates. See, this is what I was telling you. If you had people run third-party or independent that are actually well-known, have a big name, they're going to have to mention them. So they have to mention Kennedy or Manchin. Joe Manchin is not declared, by the way. West or Stein or Mapsteed is, I believe, Libertarian Party. So that's that 17% right there. So you see, they have to talk about them. They have to give them press if it's someone that's running through third-party independent that is a well-known entity. So they're scared. They're scared. That's why Steve, he skipped over that third option and he skipped over that fourth option. But ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know why, again, why Joe Biden has lost Black voters and Hispanic voters, again, point to the immigration issue. That is a big part of the problem, along with some of his campaign promises. But what we've been hearing from people, particularly in cities like Chicago and New York, and now you just heard the mayor of Denver, Colorado as well, immigration seems to be one of the biggest problems. Let's go to some of the comments here. Drew, the Hispanics I know tend to hate illegal immigration because they know how difficult it is to come here legally. Yeah, same here. I know like people that I've spoken to, people that I know that I've been friends with for a long time. They've explained to me like how the process works and how long it took. Thank you for the super chat, Cool Blue. Perhaps Biden can continue losing even more party coalition support so he can hand Trump 40 states in November. This hasn't happened since the 1980s. Whew. Thank you, Justin. Sabby, absolutely right on the migrant issue. Excellent show as always. You're on fire. Thank you so much. And thank you, Janine. Biden wants these people to come here to be the new labor force in this country and keep Black folks down. He's on tape saying, bring them in. Thank you, NK. Joe, if you don't gotta from me, I think you mean vote. If you don't vote for me, you ain't Black, Biden. He said that. Thank you, David. This is how the Dublin riot started. My Irish family talked about this for ages. Now we see it here. And it's to maintain cheap labor. Hashtag globalization. JB says it's a system of division. Divide the workers. Make it migrants versus citizens. This is part of how the rich will keep us separated. Favor one over the other. Just like how colonizers divided tribes in Africa. Bingo. Thank you, Eric. Phil Scott needs to interview Stephanie Kelton or Steve Grumbine about MMT for the benefit of all of us as FBAs. And we've had some of the MMT people on. Wrote says, if you think they're giving African-American reparations, I want what you're smoking. I don't think they are, but we should demand it. It should happen. Thank you, Meteor Dreams. Sabby, you are 100% right. It's an invasion. I wouldn't call it an invasion, and I didn't use that word. But what I am saying is that this has been brought on by the actions of the U.S. government in those countries. Thank you, Eric. Given all the nonsense that we deal with in America as Black people, you would think that more of us would be anti-capitalist. Bingo. Bingo. And thank you, Cool Blue. Some sources have Biden approval between 34% and 39%. Yes. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Chris. Sabby, also, many of these Venezuelans are being used as scabs here in LA during the hotel workers strike, and that is so very unfair. When I super chatted the Convo Couch about this, they ignored my chat, which made me upset because now I see that they have an agenda they always cover for South Americans. Oh, wow. I didn't know about that. Maybe they just missed it. I don't know. Thank you for the tip, Eli or Ellie. You're spot on, Sabby, about all of us being played by the ruling class and many divisive issues, including immigration. I am a GED and ESL instructor in Chicago, and nearly all of my students and many of my friends fall in these two categories. We in the working class are all noticing it because manipulation is getting more and more blatant. The migrants often have horrible stories too. Yep. That's right. We're going to move on to the story here about Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton. So get ready for it because it's a doozy. Okay. So we all know, we've talked about this before on this show, that Bill Clinton obviously had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And we talked recently about the fact that a federal judge has now approved the release of the flight list for Jeffrey Epstein. And apparently that is supposed to be happening within like some point at this month, just FYI. So that is coming. Well, now they have finally admitted publicly that Bill Clinton is one of the names mentioned in Epstein documents. In fact, his name is not just mentioned, it's mentioned over 50 times. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here from News Nation. And we're going to go back and take a little bit look at history to talk about Bill Clinton's past when it comes to sexual behavior. Let's get started here.
Trove of documents on accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein expected to be unveiled this week with specific names of dozens of his alleged associates, according to a new report that includes former President Bill Clinton. News Nation's Dre Clark joining us live with the latest on this. Dre.
Marnie, hello to you. At any given moment now, a long list of John and Jane Does who really have had the protection of discretion from the court. Well, their names will soon be unsealed for the world to see. Judge Loretta Preska saying those names can be unsealed beginning today. It's not likely we will see any of the names today because court is closed because of the holiday. But we're talking about more than 150 names here, men, women, former employees and associates of Jeffrey Epstein, and some of his alleged sex trafficking victims. Now, there is great interest in this list of names because people would like to see who are the powerful and prominent men and women who had connections to Jeffrey Epstein, and were they accused of any wrongdoing, or did they look the other way, knowing Epstein was a prolific sex trafficker? The public disclosure could be very embarrassing for some, but the judge says many of the people listed are already known because they gave media interviews or had their names listed in other public court documents relating to Epstein. Now, one name that is expected is former President Bill Clinton. Clinton has acknowledged he used Epstein's jumbo jet for trips overseas for his humanitarian efforts, but he denies he did anything wrong. And court documents back up the former president because there is no evidence he did anything illegal. And Mr. Clinton claims he stopped associating with Jeffrey Epstein in 2005.
Let's pause here for a second. So what they're saying, because I don't want people to get too excited. What they're saying is that there's actually no evidence that points to any wrongdoing from Bill Clinton. That's what they're saying. But even if there were, do you think that they would reveal that information about a former president of the United States, particularly a Clinton? We all know that the Clintons, including Hillary, have a way of going about things and making sure that their names are cleared. You can go back to the Whitewater case, right? It doesn't start with Jeffrey Epstein. Go back to the Whitewater case, how the Clintons were able to make sure that they cleared their names. And then we'll talk about other times where Bill Clinton in particular was able to clear his name.
Now, the names of those Epstein associates, again, some of them known and notable, were part of a now settled 2015 civil lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell brought by Virginia Giuffre. Giuffre accused Maxwell of helping Epstein sexually traffic and abuse her as a teenager. Giuffre is now 40 years old. She says one of the people who sexually assaulted her as a teenager was Epstein's very close friend, Britain's Prince Andrew. The prince denies the accusations, but did pay Giuffre a multi-million-dollar settlement as a result of her allegations. Now, Maxwell is now serving 20 years in prison after she was convicted in 2021 for her role in a scheme to sexually exploit and abuse multiple teenagers with Epstein for more than a decade.
Ghislaine Maxwell, by the way, remember I told you guys back then, she was just the fall person. Like, you know, they have the fall guy. She was just the fall person. Give them someone so that they'll hush up, right? Only this did not remain silent. Like, obviously, people are still talking about it. More information continues to come out in reference to this case. But if they were really trying to serve justice here, they would also ask for the release of the names in that book, which has not been happening, right? So you take down one person and it kind of makes it feel like, okay, yay, justice was served. We did something here. But if they were really trying to serve justice, they would have went after the clients that are in that book as well.
Epstein died by suicide in a Manhattan federal jail cell in 2019 while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. Now, the judge in this case did allow for some of those people who are on that long list of names to go ahead and file an appeal explaining to the judge why they believe their names should remain confidential. The judge said that she would closely look at those appeals and consider whether or not she will go ahead and move forward with some of those names in terms of releasing them. Meanwhile, other names have been ordered redacted because they are alleged victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Marnie.
Thank you for watching.
Okay. So as they brought out to you, just remember that some of those names they're saying will not be released, which I think is ridiculous. I think all the names should be released, period. But I want to take you back to when I covered this story before, or a different part of Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was actually confronted about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. I covered this a couple of months ago, and I want you to look at the look on his face. Watch this. Watch.
Any comments on the alleged allegation of your connection with Jeffrey Epstein?
So what he asked him was, can you comment on your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Now, pay attention to this guy who's next to him. Watch this.
Any comments on the alleged allegation of your connection with Jeffrey Epstein?
Did you see that? So this guy, he peeks his head in here. I'm assuming he's a part of his Bill Clinton's team. He peeks his head in and his ear in, and he says no. He says to Bill Clinton, basically telling Bill Clinton to tell the gentleman no. Watch this. See, I'm really big on watching nonverbal cues. So let's pay attention to the body language here.
Any comments on the alleged allegation of your connection with Jeffrey Epstein?
You see that? You see that smirk? What does that say to you? Everybody remember that? This was a couple of months ago. Someone was asking how long this is. What's the date on this video? This was, it was a year ago. It's been that long? November 9th, 2022. Yes. And I forget who the person was that confronted him, but November 9th, 2022, when I covered that story. So look at the look on Bill Clinton's face when he's asked about his behavior in reference to Jeffrey Epstein, right? Okay. Now, I want to show you something else. The Daily Mail reported this about Bill Clinton's closest aide in reference to Jeffrey Epstein. Bill Clinton's closest aide, Doug Band, is among those who links to Jeffrey Epstein are to be exposed and new tranche of documents to be released in the new year. And you'll see pictures here as well. Documents related to Doug Band, who helped rebuild Clinton's image in his post-presidency following Monica Lewinsky scandal, will be released in early January after a ruling by a judge in New York. 6 files to Band are among the hundreds ordered unsealed by Judge Loretta Preska, a tranche of information which could give fresh insight into the former president's dealings with Epstein. More than 170 people linked to Epstein are expected to be identified in the file, including the late financier's associates, friends, victims, and witnesses to his crimes. They include the managers of Epstein Island and a woman who testified at the 2021 trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's madam, who is now serving 20 years in jail. Let's go on to this point here. So again, this was Bill Clinton's former aide. There's a picture of him with Ghislaine Maxwell. And they took pictures with the people too. That's what kills me. Band worked in Clinton's White House counsel office and served as deputy assistant to the president before becoming his chief advisor from 2002 to 2011. With Band's help, Clinton fashioned a new role for his post-presidency with his Clinton Global Initiative, which donated millions to good causes. Yet, Band was also with Clinton during some of his encounters with Epstein and was on the infamous 2002 trip to Africa about the Epstein's private jet, where the passengers included Kevin Spacey and Chris Tucker. Photos from the trip show Clinton getting a massage from Shantae Davies, an Epstein victim who worked as a flight attendant on the jet, nicknamed the Lolita Express. After Clinton called Epstein a highly successful financier and a committed philanthropist with a keen sense of global markets and an in-depth knowledge of 21st century science. The documents are being released as part of a 2015 defamation case against Maxwell brought by Virginia Roberts, Prince Andrew's accuser. And we all know nothing really happened to Prince Andrew. Like, he settled out of court, right? So he paid money and they just kind of left him alone. The case was settled, but the Miami Herald sued to make the case documents public. And since 2019, they have been released on a rolling basis. There's Clinton again with his aide. And it goes on to say here, just want to go down to this part. The judge cited in a 2020 Vanity Fair interview given by Band and said it was about his or her interactions with Epstein, and him speaking out publicly weighed against continued sealing. The interview was one of the most brutal takedowns of Clinton, and it came from somebody who had been so close, he was almost regarded as family. Band, 51, a lawyer who works for a venture capital firm, landed an unpaid internship at the Clinton White House when he was 22 and still studying at Georgetown University. When Clinton left office in 2001, Band went with him and helped him to resurrect his brand that had been tarnished by controversial pardons and the Monica Lewinsky sex scandal. In the Vanity Fair piece, Band told how he had been trying to get Clinton away from Epstein since their notorious 2002 trip to Africa on his private plane. According to Band, who was on the trip, Epstein made a series of absurd claims, including that he had invented the market in derivatives, a complex financial instrument. Band didn't know about Epstein's crimes then. He was first arrested in 2006, but got enough bad vibes to advise Clinton to cut ties with him. Now, I want to go on and add this part. So they are telling you that they don't have evidence to prove that Bill Clinton actually had any wrongdoing in reference to Jeffrey Epstein, but that his name is mentioned over 50 times in the documents that will be released some point this month. However, they may not have evidence of that, but what we do have is history. And I want to remind you of someone in particular, and you're going to see other women as well. I want to remind you of Juanita Broderick, the woman who accused Bill Clinton of sexual assault when he was actually still governor of Arkansas. Don't remember her? Did you know that she was on Rising back when Crystal and Sagar hosted Rising? She called in. This was in reference to Tara Reade's allegations. Listen to what Juanita said.
Impressed you and made you feel like she was telling the truth?
It's that she had so many details that Christine Blasey Ford would never dream of having. It was, and the tone of her voice, I've never met her personally, but we talked at length, and I've talked with many women who have gone through what she has gone through and what I've gone through. And there's just a vibration that you feel and you know when someone has really suffered this. Now, people may think that I'm crazy, but it's been 40 years since it happened to me, really 42. And you just develop a sense of someone when they're telling the truth.
And Juanita, I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you was especially because the media did not take you seriously whenever you came forward. And do you see a similarity in the way that Tara Reade is being treated because of the nature of the accuser?
Oh, it's similar, but it's absolutely different also. Tara is much more brave than I am. Back in 91, when Bill Clinton first started running for president, I was too afraid to come forward even back then. I never came forward. I had gotten past this and I had a happy life and I did not want to rock the boat at all. Tara's a brave woman.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you feel like the media coverage is similar to the treatment of you during that time? And how do you feel like it's different?
Let me respond really quick to what Juanita said about not coming forward. So this is true. She actually never came forward. The press found her. During the time when Bill Clinton had the Monica Lewinsky allegations and that broke in the press went to find other women that also had allegations or they were rumored to have accused Bill Clinton of sexual misconduct. So they actually found her. She was still living in Arkansas. She was just, minding her own business. And that's how her story came forward.
It's so different because there wasn't a Me Too. There wasn't, but it's so much the same, too, because here you had President Bill Clinton that was doing so much for the feminists, and they did not want to go against him because they had so many bills in the process of being passed for women. So they wouldn't go. And now you have the very same thing going on with Biden. He's getting the support from the feminist groups, just like Biden did. Just like Clinton did. But the media were horrible about me back then when I first came forward.
And let's go ahead and stop that there. And we're going to go to another clip. Think about what Juanita said there. The feminists actually were on the side of Bill Clinton instead of being on the side of the victims, right? Because he was apparently doing things for feminist groups. So she was comparing that to what Tara Reade was going through in reference to Joe Biden. Now I want to take you back to a time again. This was 7 years ago. Juanita Broaddrick, Paula Jones, and Kathleen Willey speak out about their issues with Bill Clinton. Now, this was on Hannity apparently 7 years ago, but this was all three of them in person. Again, we may not have hardcore evidence that Bill Clinton had wrongdoing in reference to Epstein, but we do have history, and that's something that we have to consider. Listen to this.
I spoke with Juanita Broaddrick, Paula Jones, and Kathleen Willey. Take a look. Thank you all for being here.
Oh, thanks.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
You were invited to the second debate, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and you all came willingly. You wanted to go. Why?
I wanted to support Donald Trump, first and foremost. But I think that the thing that we wanted to get over, the thing that's most important to me and to us is to tell the women, especially the younger women in this country and the older women and everybody, that everybody in the mainstream press is calling all of Bill Clinton's crimes infidelities. Rape Sexual assault and sexual harassment are not infidelities. They are crimes and they are misdemeanors. His wife is covering for him. No champion of women attacks the victims of sexual assaults and rapes.
Think about what she just said. She said that Hillary Clinton was covering for Bill Clinton. Why would Hillary do that if she cares about women so much? I'm bringing this up too because I want you to remember just recently Hillary Clinton made a formal statement talking about we should all care for the women that were supposedly assaulted by Hamas. But Hillary Clinton did not care about other women who came forward about her husband when they had these issues. Why did Hillary not care? Because Hillary was looking out for her own political career. That's what this is all about. I call this a marriage of convenience, where Hillary Clinton knew how Bill Clinton was. Get out of here. Bill Clinton hadn't been faithful to Hillary Clinton since day one. She knew he had this issue. She knew about Juanita Broaddrick when he was governor of Arkansas, yet she still pushed him. You should run for president. She knew who this man was. But she was looking out for herself. They say women need to back women. Sometimes women turn their back on other women, okay? And look out for their own interest.
Paula?
The same thing. I just want to remind, the young people that doesn't know our stories and maybe have seen us for the first time. And I wanted them to see that we were there and why we were there. And that hopefully that would have made a statement.
Juanita?
Yeah, I think it's really important for the millennials to know. Those that weren't born when I came forward after Bill Clinton raped me, and those that were too young to understand what we went through, especially the time that it was back in the 70s. It was very hard for someone to come forward. And so, yes, I did go to the Trump debate. I thought that we might possibly be able to bring this out and influence people and be able to tell them that Hillary is not for all women. Hillary is only for one woman, and that's herself.
You heard that? Hillary is only for one woman, and that is herself. So there were three women here. I remember Paula Jones. I mean, I was really young at this time, but Paula Jones was heavily scrutinized in the media. Juanita Broaddrick. All these women were heavily scrutinized because they came forward against a sitting president. Tara Reid, same thing. This is why I don't believe that they're actually going to, if Bill Clinton even had wrongdoing, I don't think that information would be released. They're going to protect Bill Clinton. They're going to protect him because he's a former president. And also he's a Clinton. And Hillary and Bill have gotten away with a lot of corrupt crap.
I think you raise a really good point, because I think there is this whole generation of people that do not know your stories.
All right.
Over the years, I've had the opportunity to get to know all of you and interview all of you. And really, I think the more important thing today is, considering this is even in the news today, with Donald Trump, has the mainstream media been receptive to asking you three about your stories?
Oh, definitely not.
Nobody?
No.
Nobody's asked.
No.
Nobody has asked. The New York Times never called you?
No.
Not until we went into the Trump spin room.
Okay, well,
And
they were
that
there.
was- yeah.
But in other words, because this is a really important point, because they're all reporting today, Donald Trump did this, or kissed this person or that person. You're saying that none of these media outlets contacted you in this election campaign?
Nothing like CNN.
To tell your story?
Or NBC, or ABC, or CBS.
Nope. With 26 days to go, and they haven't contacted you, does that reek of politics to you?
Absolutely.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
Should tell you something.
Yeah. Well, let me give you the opportunity for those people that have never heard your story. Well, Juanita, we'll start with you.
Back in 1978, when I was working for Bill Clinton's campaign for governor, I was raped by Bill Clinton. I was viciously raped. And then 3 weeks later, when I happened to be at a fundraiser for him, but I didn't attend the fundraiser, I was just going there to hand in information to tell them I was no longer going to volunteer for the campaign. Hillary personally threatened me.
Let me go back to
That's the part, another part I wanted you to hear. You heard what she said? She said that Hillary personally threatened her. Hillary did. These people are corrupt. They're corrupt people. And I don't care. You know, Bill Clinton, yeah, you were hanging out with Epstein. They may say they don't have hardcore evidence against you, but let's look at the facts from years ago. Okay? Bill didn't keep it in the pants. People talk about Bill cheated on Hillary. Bill was assaulting other women. Okay? Let's stop saying that it was infidelity. Let's stop saying that he had indiscretions. He was assaulting other women and he became president of the United States. And then while he was president, he was sleeping with an intern. Yet till this day, Bill Clinton goes to an event. People applaud this man. Bill Clinton still gets invitations to speak at different fundraisers and events as if nothing happened. That is how powerful these people are. Why do you think they don't want to release the book with all the names of the clients? This is crazy. Think about this, folks. Why is this happening in this country? Why is this man still applauded? And by women. You see the women stand up and give him applause, a standing ovation. What the hell is wrong with people? What is wrong with people? People looking for an idol. We will continue to follow this. Actually, if you want to see the rest of that interview, push this up here. If you want to see the rest of this interview, it's called Bill Clinton's Accusers. We're ignored by mainstream media. If you want to see the rest of that, because they've been trying to protect Bill Clinton since day one. I wonder how Hillary Clinton feels now that this news is coming out again about Epstein and her husband's name. And you know what's interesting? I want you to remember this coming into 2024 election, because it was already stated that Hillary Clinton is going to be very active for Joe Biden, going to be very active. Don't trust this woman. Don't trust this woman. How you going to be active? How you still, just jumping up in front of people and just speaking so freely? And Bill Clinton, all the things that he's done, and now with this information that's coming out in reference to Jeffrey Epstein, people just overlook it and just say, well, at least she's not a Republican. That's how brainwashed the country has become. If you have not had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you very much. If you're a newbie, don't forget to sub and share. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to our final story. Actually, let me go to the comments first before I do that. I want to remember those. Moya says, bring on Whitney Webb. I would love to. I'm trying to work on contact information for her. Heartlands Media, say hello to Kit. Guys, please make sure you go over and support Heartlands Media. They've been going through it with YouTube, so please go over and show them some love. Outstanding work on the Hill, Sabby Sabs. Thank you so much. Wired TARDIS. I remembered that Clinton assaulted a woman as governor, but I forgot her name. Juanita Broderick. Bryce says, wasn't it you, Sabby, that covered Hillary, got a known, child defender off and was his lawyer? Yes. Yep. That was before I think that was before she was with, oh no, I think she was with Bill during that time. Yeah, that was one of her earlier cases. Thank you for the super sticker, Aaron. And thank you for the super sticker, Regine. Thank you very much. We're going to get into our final story. We will do call-in tonight. One of you sent me this story. Thank you. It was a recent discussion that Briahna Joy Gray and Robbie had on Rising. Now, this was in reference to Nikki Haley's comments in reference to the Civil War, in reference to the Civil War and Nikki Haley not mentioning slavery. And I actually hadn't seen this at that point in time. So when I covered that story, that's why I didn't talk about this. But I think we need to talk about some of the things that were said during this debate here with Bree and Robbie. First, I want to start off with this document that Bree is reading in reference to Mississippi secession during that time. So let's go into that part first, and then we'll get into the actual debate.
Someone pulled Mississippi's secession document, in which they state very clearly, this is after first sentence, which says we're leaving the Union. The second sentence in Mississippi's Declaration of Immediate Causes which induce and justify the secession of the state of Mississippi from the federal union, they say, our position is thoroughly identified with the institution of slavery, the greatest material interest of the world. Its labor supplies the product which constitutes by far the largest and most important portions of commerce of the earth. These products are peculiar to the climate verging on the tropical regions, and by an imperious law of nature, none but the black race can bear exposure to the tropical sun. These products have become necessities of the world, and a blow at slavery is a blow at commerce and civilization. That blow has been long aimed at the institution and was at the point of reaching its consummation. There was no choice left to us but submission to the mandates of abolition or dissolution of the Union, whose principles have been subverted to work at our ruin.
So that piece there that Bree just read points to that once again, slavery was a part of capitalism, right? It was free labor. And that was from Mississippi. So they were basically stating there that no, we are not willing to remove slavery. We want to keep things the way that they are, because obviously they were talking about capital, right? They didn't want to have to pay the slaves, et cetera, et cetera. And they're the only ones that know how to grow these products and produce these products. We talked about this before. And I told you guys, having lived in South Carolina, that one of the big products in South Carolina during that time was rice. So when colonizers came to North America, later came to the United States later on, they didn't actually know how to grow rice successfully. So they brought slaves over from Africa to grow rice. So rice was really big in parts of South Carolina, particularly in Charleston as well. I told you with Rhode Island, their big product was rum. So yes, Rhode Island had slavery. Some people always give me a shock look when they hear me say that, but that was the third largest actually was Rhode Island. So again, it was about slavery. It was about capitalism, and it was also about free labor. So let's go a little bit further here, and then we'll get to the next part.
They wanted to continue slavery. I'm not arguing with you.
And not only that, they wanted to continue slavery in service of some of the things that Nikki Haley said there that America is trying to preserve. She said this is about capitalism. This is about government should be about supporting people's ability to have freedoms, to do what they want to do. And I think that what's so frustrating by people who are not conservative is this framing of freedoms always excludes the question of freedoms for who. While making an argument about government and how it should be in service of capitalism, the people who wanted slavery also believe that to be the case, which is why they wanted to leave the federal government. But in their view, the freedom of them to own slaves and to do what they thought only black people could do was produce these products that the world needed, but only black labor could produce, was the core, primary, immediate driving purpose of them leaving the Union. So yes, we do live in a country where I think saying that out loud is stigmatizing, despite how true it is. But there are a lot of people who do call it the war of Northern aggression, who see the Civil War, to see who maintain the Civil War was about states' rights without asking the question, states' rights to do what exactly? And there is something frustrating about Nikki Haley's persistence here and tiptoeing around those people when giving an answer in New Hampshire, a very northeastern state that had absolutely nothing to do with the Confederacy.
Yeah, she just should have said slavery. I mean, what else do you want me to say?
So we're going to go to the next part in just a second. But one thing that I do want to add is that when Bree mentions the states' rights, when I lived in the South, I'll never forget this. I'm telling you guys, I heard some wild things. Okay. When I lived in the South, did you know I went to a party like my freshman year, me and my roommate at that time, she was from New Jersey originally. Her family moved further south, but she was originally from New Jersey. She had a very thick Jersey accent, so it was very thick. And we were at a party. It was a frat party. And you know how these college parties go. Especially as a freshman, what's your name? What's your major? Where you're from? Like that kind of thing. And This guy was asking her like where she's from. She said, Jersey. This guy looked at my friend and said, the South should have won the war. Like people would say like weird, just random, just weird things like that. Like, what are you talking about? You know, because if you come and say that to me and you say the South should have won the war, you're basically telling me that we should have still had slaves in this country. So when people say it wasn't about slavery, it was about slave rights, what were one of the rights that they were fighting for? The right to keep slaves. Don't let people try to gaslight you with that BS. It was just about freedom. It was just about slaves' rights. No, it was about the rights to keep slaves, not just about states' rights. Now, this is the part where the debate comes in. I don't know what Robbie was thinking when he made this comment, but here we go.
But you could also, there are other things one can say about the circumstances leading to the Civil War. It doesn't seem really important to talk about, which is maybe why there was a level of annoying that question got asked, because why? And I'm sure the person asking it probably was a Democratic plant as alleged, but you know, you have to be prepared for that kind of thing. So
I mean, it's New Hampshire. It's a state with a lot of independent voters. I don't know if it's a Democratic plant so much as that it's probably a person.
Okay, it was somebody that was trying to get Nikki Haley in trouble.
Yeah,
and she fell for it.
A person. Like this feels a little like when Democrats argue that Russiagate did posts that made the election outcome for Trump in 2016. And then the post they'll point to is something that says like, America has a history with racism. And they're like, oh, black people were deluded by Russia into thinking America has a history of racism. It's like, well, It's a true statement. Either you can confront the true statement and deal with it, or you can't. If people are saying true things that make you look bad, that's on you, bub. You can't externalize blame on that one. And this, you know, Haley framed, she said, well, this is a hard question, like, you know, sarcastically, oh, hit me with an easy question, why don't you? It actually was an easy question. It's an easy question in a country, in a world, and in a political environment where you can say honest historical facts about the things that happened in American history. Honest historical facts about the war that took more American lives than any war in American history. But we don't live in that country. And at the same time that she's prevaricating on that stage, we have people like Christopher Rufo and Ron DeSantis who are actively trying to pull African American history, which is American history, from schools so that no one will read what I just read into the record here about what Mississippi's secession document actually says.
The thing is that Nikki Haley was basically, she didn't want to bring that up because she was trying to pander to her base. And she knows once she goes into that territory, it's like, oh, that's going to turn off some people that are part of her base. That's really what this was about. I mean, the fact that Vivek and Ron DeSantis actually afterwards schooled her on, like called her out for this and schooled her on this. Don't get me wrong. Like, this is a game like all politicians play, like they are running against each other. I don't know if Ron DeSantis would have answered that properly either. But the thing is that was basically a missed opportunity for Nikki Haley, but it wasn't an accident. It was on purpose. And I want people to understand that she was pandering to her base, so she knew that would upset certain people. So here we go.
Nobody is trying to stop you from reading about Mississippi's succession document.
Robbie.
No. The reality about the Civil War, it has been taught, is being taught, and will continue to be taught. It's not Confederates planning our school books. I'm surprised you have this. It sounds, the North did you could say that was fine. They needed to do that, and this was necessary to end the institution of slavery, which is horrible. The hundreds of thousands of deaths, the invasion and conquest of the South, the burning of city after city, a scorched earth policy of totally destroying the Confederate armed forces, killing and capturing their leaders. That's fine. That's what we did. We can't examine. I think it's fine to wonder if that was the greatest course of action or the ideal way to bring about the end of slavery, particularly because.
Let's go back to something Robbie said here, because I want to point out something, guys. I want to show you how. Just pay attention. Just walk with me here.
Which is American history from schools, so that no one will read what I just read into the record here about what Mississippi's secession document actually says.
Nobody is trying to stop you from reading about Mississippi's succession document.
Robbie.
No. The reality about the Civil War, it has been taught, is being taught, and will continue to be taught. we're not like run it's not Confederates planning our school books.
Pause. It will continue to be taught from what perspective and from whose perspective? He said it's not Confederates planning our school books. I don't see any black people planning those school books either, Robbie. You don't have to be a Confederate. You don't have to be a part of the Confederacy or a son or a daughter of the Confederacy to have those views. You don't have to have see, this is another thing again where I feel like people confuse overt and covert. Like they think that the only type of racism is overt racism. There's also covert racism. And also, one of the biggest tricks of white supremacy is to actually get someone who's black to do it for you. That's your Kamala Harris. That's your Barack Obama. So you got to pay attention to those things. That's your Hakeem Jeffries, pandering to countries like Israel and ignoring the plight of black Americans in this country. But pay attention to this part.
I mean, I'm surprised you have this. It sounds, I mean, the North did you could say that was fine. They needed to do that, and this was necessary to end the institution of slavery, which is horrible. The hundreds of thousands of deaths, the invasion and conquest of the South, the burning of city after city.
That part right there, the burning of city after city. Now, he's speaking about that in reference to the Civil War and the North coming in to fight against the South. But when we talk about burning of city by city, that was also Black Wall Street. That was Black Wall Street. When we're talking about the time after Reconstruction, when Black people actually had their own communities and were actually doing well financially and was able to turn the dollar in the Black community over and over, there were several Black Wall Streets in this country, not just one. Everyone mentioned Tulsa, but there were several Black Wall Streets. There were Black Wall Streets in North Carolina, not just in Oklahoma. And guess what? They were burned to the ground. Follow this.
A scorched earth policy of totally destroying the Confederate armed forces, killing and capturing their leaders. That's fine. That's what we did. We can't examine. I mean, I think it's fine to wonder if that was the greatest course of action or the ideal way to bring about the end of slavery, particularly because the North invented the draft and the purpose of doing it, which is, in my view, also a form of slavery, that then persisted for another 100 years.
Watch Bree's expression.
Forcing people to.
So here was Robbie comparing the draft to chattel slavery. It's one of those moments where it's I'm sitting up here wondering how this conversation would have gone if Bree was not sitting at that desk. Because the reality is this. This is a perfect example of when someone is trying to talk about what happened to a particular group of people at that point in time. This is a perfect example of someone else coming in, maybe it might be Robbie, someone else coming in and saying, but let me tell you how my people were also affected. This is not about, it's just, this is not the time, Robbie. This is not about the draft. I don't agree with the draft. I'm sure Bree doesn't agree with the draft. But the conversation at hand at that point in time was about slavery. For you to make the comparison of slavery versus the draft, this is not the same thing. People were forced to this country against their will, in chains. The women had their babies taken away from them. And I'm not even going to get too graphic on the show and tell you how they took the babies away from them. They were whipped. There was separation between lighter skinned Black people and darker skinned Black people, which still goes on today, by the way. All right. So they took the lighter skinned slaves and they let them stay in the house with the master. And the darker skinned slaves had to work out in the field, and you wonder why we have colorism in this country still today. They didn't even give the slaves the same type of food to eat that they ate. They gave them the scraps. Took the children, took the husband away from the wife. So when people say that, well, Black people wouldn't have these problems if the fathers would stay in the home. The first time the Black father was taken away from the family was during slavery, okay? Then it happened again during the war on drugs. This is not the same as the draft. Not to mention, some people volunteered to fight for the Civil War. I could just not believe he made this comparison.
Go die in warfare is the most objectionable thing I could possibly think of.
Weird. I think 400 years of chattel slavery having ritualized.
If the government can make you die. If they can make you die.
Do you think slave owners can kill their slaves didn't kill their slaves?
I'm saying this is a form of slavery. I'm not saying slavery is not slavery.
You just said that the draft is the worst thing that you could think of. And we're having a conversation about chattel slavery.
You do not, if the government can make you go die on a foreign battlefield, you don't own yourself in any conceivable way.
So let me break this down for a second. First of all, white people that fought in the Civil War still had rights, Robbie. Slaves didn't have any rights at all. Slaves weren't allowed to even read. You can't. This is why I said again, like, we cannot do this whole, well, what about me? There's a time and place for you to include yourself, but this is not that time. This is not that time. So the thing is, again, slaves did not have any rights. They were considered to be property. They weren't even considered to be people. And again, like I said, some of those soldiers volunteered to fight in the Civil War. Don't agree with the draft. Not for it. Don't think it's a cool thing. But you cannot put that on the same level as chattel slavery in this country.
So that's why I don't romanticize the North Act.
You have a right to get married if you're in a war. If you're drafted, you have a right to keep your own children, not have them literally sold away from you as property. You have a right to wages for your labor. You had a right to a GI Bill.
One kind of slavery is the right way to get.
Robbie, you can make your point without making a comparison between the draft and chattel slavery, which was a multi-generational pogrom against millions of Africans who were brought across the Atlantic and kept for hundreds of years without a single right in the land.
Very bad. Shouldn't have done any of it. Should not have enslaved people in the course of ending it.
But see, at this point, I feel like he still doesn't get it. He still doesn't understand how problematic his statement was. That's the thing. And I said this on Twitter too. I was like, I cannot believe this. Just crazy to me. Because that tells me, again, we missed something here in this country. Germany talks about the Holocaust. And they said that they've learned from that. They paid reparations to Jewish people. Germany did. But in this country, we missed something. People still don't fully understand. Like, I don't understand how you can see that as the same thing, because it's not the same thing. And I think part of the problem is because the history books have actually whitewashed slavery. If you want to know what really happened during slavery, you're going to have to do some research yourself. Go to the library and grab some history books from the library, not the textbooks, because some of the things that happened would be too graphic for them to put in a textbook for K through 12 school. Not to mention what they did to the women, what they did to the men. Some things I can't say on here, but you can figure it out. So it's not the same. But I felt like this was one of those moments where it's like you're talking about what has happened to Black people and another group tries to insert theirself into your oppression. And you can't be doing this, guys. Look, I'm here to tell you, when I started this channel as an interview channel. I interviewed progressive candidates. I interviewed activists. I still interview them on the show. Well, not progressive candidates running through Democratic Party, but I still interview activists and stuff like that, like on the show. Journalists, that kind of thing. Then I turned more into a news program, but I still do interviews. So it's news and interviews. But one of the reasons why I started this show is because I was very frustrated. And same thing over at RBN. One of the reasons why we started was because we were very frustrated with the narrative, not just from mainstream media, but the narrative around the plight of Black Americans in this country that was coming from independent media. Because when you looked around, it was mainly what? It was mainly white men. When I watched left independent media, who did you have, right? It was Majority Report. It was Secular Talk. It was Rising, although Rising has two different political points of view. It was, who else were we watching during that time? Oh, TYT. I used to watch TYT and stuff. And I would hear them talk about, when it came to like Black issues, I feel like they were not talking about it from the right perspective because they didn't have that lived experience. So it was important to me that when I started this, that I fill in those holes that they did not fill in. But this is what happens when you just have that voice.
And in fact, it is obviously prohibited by the same amendment to our Constitution that ends slavery should have applied to that draft as well. But
all right,
I don't like people. I don't like people dying. I don't like people being enslaved. I don't want any of this. And I don't know what we're arguing about at this point.
Me either.
What? So you support the draft?
I support not comparing the draft to chattel slavery.
Okay, so you support what, the invasion of the South and the killing of hundreds of thousands of people and the burning of all their cities?
See, this is the do you condemn Hamas perspective sliding into this conversation, where Robbie says, oh, so you support the burning of the cities and all of that war that happened as part of the Civil War? And this goes back to the question I asked you guys again about the people in Gaza. Do oppressed people have the right to resist? And I'll continue to ask that question because that's how we should look at this. Or do they have to remain enslaved? Do they have to remain occupied?
Ancestors? Hell yeah, Robbie.
Okay, we found a war you can get excited about. Yes, total destruction until they surrender. Very interesting.
So let me, when we're talking about Gaza, you say, well, if Hamas will just surrender, then we don't have to have a war anymore.
Exactly.
Well, the South just released the slaves. They wouldn't have to have a civil war.
Exactly. And they destroyed every city and every armed force until they achieved that outcome. That's what I'm saying. No, you have a problem with this as applied to any other conflict, but not this one.
The difference is, Robbie, that you ignore the fact that 2.3 million Palestinians have been kept in an open-air prison for decades, after 700,000 of them that lived and were indigenous to the land now called Israel were driven out in an ethnic cleansing event in 1948 at the founding of Israel. Subsequently, they were living under those chattel conditions with a blockade where Israel won't even let them have chocolate. They have to have special passes and checkpoints like apartheid South Africa to get from one point to another. They were being kept on a starvation diet. They were not given access to medicine, food, and they were ritualistically, routinely, the lawn was mowed, where hundreds of Palestinians were kept on.
They put terrorists in charge of their government. Those terrorists attacked the state of Israel. Israel is now
all right. I'm
continuing this action until it defeats them, just as the North did to the South in the Civil War. If you'd been around then, I don't know. To be consistent, I think you'd have to be saying, no, they should hold back. They should permanent ceasefire.
No. What Robbie doesn't get here is that, again, when it comes to the Civil War, when it comes to slavery issue, when it comes to Israel and Gaza, the people who are oppressed are not in power. The state of Israel is in power when it comes to Gaza, the Palestinian people, and when it comes to the West Bank. They are the ones in power. The Palestinians are not in control. When it came to the issue of civil war in this country, part of the big reason because of the Civil War was because the South didn't want to free the slaves. They wanted to keep slavery, right? Who was oppressed? The slaves were oppressed. White slave owners were in power. So you can't. So I ask this question again, people, and we really got to drive this home. Do oppressed people have the right to resist? If it were you and you were in that situation, what would you want to do? See, this is why. Let him finish here.
That would be ridiculous because they were going to. Would you have said that in the Civil War circumstance?
Wait, first of all, you're dramatically, I wasn't going to touch this because this is going long and not the point, but you're dramatically mischaracterizing.
You said they won't let them read the Missouri secession document in schools anymore.
It was Mississippi.
Whatever it was.
What I was going to say was that it was beside the point, but you're dramatically mischaracterizing how the Civil War was handled. While slaves got nothing, slave owners were literally paid reparations and given the cost of their losses and made whole during the war. And after
again, protecting capitalism. And that's what people need to hear. You got to drive that home. When people say, oh, I'm against reparations, slave owners got reparations.
After a very brief period where it looked like there would be some semblance of enforced equality in the South, it went out the door after Lincoln's death. And we had a very brief period where we actually had black senators elected and the like in the South. And then we had a pogrom of post-war life and indentured servitude and Jim Crow laws that were almost as bad as the slavery itself, which lasted up until the civil rights era when my parents were born. So, excuse me, this is not a historical abstraction, although for people who don't read, who live in Florida, very soon it might just be an abstraction as they're disallowed from actually taking African-American classes at these state schools.
Go ahead.
But this is really real. And I do think it's very telling that the same people who I think would likely probably defend the South in the Civil War, a lot of the people who aren't understanding why the cause of freedom is so important for Palestinians. It's so important for Black people because fundamentally there are some inalienable rights which are in our Constitution, but which were not evenly applied to all human beings in the United States of America because Black people under the law were not considered to be full human beings, according to our Constitution.
And I'm saying it's totally inconsistent, your view on whether is the correct course of action for a government to invade another area seeking the total elimination and destruction of an enemy government and then imposing new conditions on it.
The North was Gaza. Israel is not seeking the total elimination of a government.
Hamas is the government of the area.
Israel is in. I don't know how many experts have to go on TV and say this. Israel is doing a genocidal campaign against the people of Gaza.
They are not. That is not true.
It is 100%.
I think it's one of those times where I think Robbie doesn't want it to be true. Sometimes when you don't want something to be true, you say that it's not true, but it is true. It is true. I don't know how many times you have to see the videos of people like Netanyahu and other officials from the ministry in Israel making these blanket statements saying that they want the Palestinian people gone. And this goes back years before this war even started. But again, I think Robbie wants it to be so. And sometimes when you want it to be so, you say that something is true when it's not true.
True.
Well, it's not.
They have killed over 200,000 people, half of which are children. They have killed 11,000 children.
20,000.
20,000 children. 11,000 of them are children. They have bombed almost every residential building in Gaza, churches, schools, universities, so that nobody can go back. They have explicitly stated a plan of ethnically cleansing them to either Arab countries in the region or to the Sinai Peninsula specifically. They are planting literal flags at the same time that their kill ratio of actual members of Hamas to civilians is lower than what the terrorists did on October 7th. This is not a pogrom. This is not an effort to get rid of Hamas. And if you are believing that and repeating that at this point, I don't know what to tell you. If they are after Hamas and they're the most ineffectual, inept, ridiculous army in the world, and they shouldn't get a cent more of American dollar, and nobody should take them seriously. By contrast, we had a country called the United States of America, half of which decided that they were willing to leave the Union in order to maintain the institution of slavery. And we fought a war to end it. They did not just randomly do sniper attacks and kill Confederate soldiers.
Briahna, that is ridiculous. They burned cities down. They killed half the entire population of military age men. There were all sorts of atrocities committed. It's fine. It's warfare. It happens.
Would Robbie have this same type of passion and fire about the Black Wall Street cities that were burned? Would he have that same type of passion and fire about that?
I'm not saying I'm against it. It's unjustified, but it is warfare, and that's how warfare goes.
Robbie, they killed military men? Wow, I wish they were killing military men in Gaza, but
This is warfare. It is bloody. It is destructive. They blow up things. You burn them down.
They specifically said, how many Israeli officials have to get on TV and say, oh, they're all Hamas? Everyone's a likely target.
If you had smartphones back then, it would look the same way.
It wouldn't, because
That's not true.
It's just, Robbie, look, I don't have to finish this conversation with you, because you're representing a viewpoint that is like nobody's. And so I'm happy it's your read. Go ahead and end the segment. I don't need to argue with you.
I'm representing a viewpoint that's nobody's?
Yes, I don't need to sit and argue with you that actually the Civil War was much more cruel, and that the North was worse than the South, and the literal genocide that we're seeing unfold before our eyes.
That's not a putting word in my mouth. I'm not saying that.
You can feel free to clarify and wrap at your leisure.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a lot of work to do in this country. We have a lot of work to do in this country to get people to understand the plight of what has happened to Black Americans in this country. And it doesn't just stop with slavery. And that's the other point. Like, even after that, there were Jim Crow laws. There was the burning down of the Black Wall Streets. There was also, even after that, you have to deal with, everybody likes to praise FDR for his New Deal, but how many of those programs that FDR implemented actually left out Black people and indigenous people? That's why Bree mentioned the GI Bill. There's that too as well. You also have to talk about the issue with the crime bill, which was co-written by Joe Biden. Then you had the war on drugs, then you had the crime bill. So all of these things that affected primarily the African American community, it is very clear to me that we still have a lot of work to be done in this country when it comes to history. Very clear to me. We are going to do call in tonight. I'm going to take a very quick break. I'll be back. We'll head over to call in, and yeah, man. Right. Don't forget to hit the like if you haven't had a chance to do so. And Eric, I think we just need to go through the super chats.
Yeah, a lot of chats. All right. Well, here we go. It's a new year here in 2024. So this is a part of the show where we give Sabby. I'll make myself a little larger here. There we go. Ooh, I'll go even larger. There you go. So this is the part of the show where I'm going to adjust something here, where we have where we give our Sabrina a little break, and then we'll go into the call in. Actually, I have a new mic, so I'm testing out my levels. Test. I think that's pretty good. Let's see. You can let me know how it sounds. Yeah, new year, new mic. So I know that old mic was kind of so-so. So we're gonna get into call-in, and we'll show you where that happens. So so when Sabby comes back from her little break, we'll be jumping soon into that, and I think people will have a bit of things to talk about. Hey, let's show that one. Here we go. All right, call-in will be 144. Bill Clinton, Biden polls, Bree and Robbie debate. My goodness, yeah, you can talk about those things. Saul says, I got a Shure mic. Yes, it's a good brand. And of course, as always, you can talk about anything you want. You'll call in, and we always want to hear from you. Now, let's see. Look at what we got for some super chats that came in here. Thanks for this one, Aaron Atto. If Joe Biden was really serious, he'd repeal the Dred Scott decision. That would move the needle. Yeah, and of course, he's not really serious, right? It's Joe Biden and all the elected Democrats and elected Republicans, right? They don't represent us. They represent the billionaires, and the billionaires play things, the mega corporations, and it's important to always keep that in mind. Hang on. There we go. And thanks for this super chat, John McFadden. The Mississippi Declaration, American and global economies, no theory in this, just facts. Right? Thanks for that one. And I noticed this one here from Notori, who we often hear from in the call-in. Oh, Bad Cookie says the mic is perfect. Sounds good. All right. Thanks, Bad Cookies. All right. Notori, who we do hear from in the call-in often, she's saying, yeah, that's why I can't watch that show Rising, because it seems like Bree is always having to teach him and the audience. Yeah, it's you know, I do think Robbie really is that racist. Let's be real about it, and stupid. And it's this kind of, really just immature kind of coddled attitude. But I also think, it's good for ratings. You got to wonder if they when the conversations like come up about this, how can he say this, how can it be this terrible? Well, I mean, when he is this terrible, the ratings go through the roof. I mean, we're watching it, it's a clip all over the place, it's the buzz, it's what everybody's talking about. It's all press is good press. I don't know, but I wonder about that aspect of it, is how much of this is almost kind of on purpose, because the fights get eyeballs. Thanks for the super chat. Word from the point. They were enslaved African people, not slaves. Yes, thank you for that. And thanks for this super chat also, Dijon. Woke to white people means something totally different than woke for black people. Yeah, that's definitely a thing. That's only thing that I've learned more about and heard about on RBN and from Sabby, and that whole idea around the word woke and how it's been so co-opted by the corporate establishment. Thanks for this from Roger Meadows. See what happens when our history is leftist of K through 12. I'm not sure what you're saying, Roger, but I think you're talking about the the education system, and how it just doesn't get into these real things. Thanks for this one as well. CRT is woke my ass. Thanks, Roger. We'll probably hear from Roger in the call-in as well. And thanks for this super sticker, Eric Weaver. Appreciate that one. And thanks for this one, NK. 100% correct about the whitewashing of slavery. History books would have you believe that it was just a bad job and not the dehumanizing evil that it was. Yes, that's a good point there. And thanks for this super chat, Marcus. The next big question for our time: do workers have a right to violently resist the monopolies, globalist bourgeoisie? And I mean, I wouldn't. I'm never one to advocate violence. To go that far. I think what's really important is about getting our goals and our demands straight and getting our numbers together. And I think if we can do that, and anything is possible, and I think we are in a moment just in history at this point where everything is just so crazy and so ridiculous that, I kind of think anything can happen. And I think we could have a situation where real change happens from, people really getting in the streets. And thanks for this super chat. Afro-American. Thanks for the super sticker. and thanks especially for this very generous super chat, Dana Mitchell. 200 Sabby, you coming in 24, kicking ass. Thank you. And thank you so much for that. Very generous one, Dana Mitchell. And yeah, like with the whole stuff with the migrant issue and whatnot, I do think it's important to keep connecting the dots. And when you keep connecting the dots, right? Why are they coming in? It's economics. It is capitalism. I think we can certainly do better than capitalism, I think is a good framing to put this back to. But if you keep connecting the dots as to why those things happen, what do you always come back to? You always come back to the money and the corruption. It's, if we had a Congress that wasn't totally corrupt and bought off and serving the billionaires, not serving us, then that Congress would be capable, especially when we start calling these things out, would be capable of giving everyone good housing. And, you have that as just a basic question. Why doesn't everyone have good quality, affordable, or even free and public housing? And it's because it's not in the interest of the billionaires to do that. And from the billionaire interest, from the real estate interest, every unit of free or affordable quality public housing, every unit of that type that is built, they consider a threat to their profit, to their bottom lines, because scarce housing gives you expensive housing. And so, it always comes back to the money and corruption, and these same real estate interests pouring millions and billions into Congress and into the whole political system to get their way. And it's just one example of how these things always, not that one, of how these things always line up. I know I keep putting us on the big screen, but it's always back to money and corruption. Get your demands straight and you'll get to your solutions. And I did want to make sure, Sabby, that you see this very generous super chat.
Oh, Dana Mitchell, thank you so much. That is very generous. Sabby, you coming in 24, kicking ass. Thank you. Yes, this year, I'm telling you, it's going to be lit. It's going to be lit.
All right, we're doing more in 24. All right, we got Colin coming up next, and we'll see you in there.
All right, let's go ahead and do the damn thing. This is episode 144 on Call In. Bill Clinton, Biden polls, Bree and Robbie debate. I don't know why Robbie's name is in all caps there. I think I meant to put debate in all caps. Anyway, let's chat. That is over at Call In. The link is pinned to the top of the chat. And of course, anything else you want to discuss, we can discuss on Call In as well. So again, that link is pinned at the top of the chat. We can go ahead and head on over there. Other than that, guys, you know how we do this. We're coming in hot.
Oh, wait, I forgot one. There we go. Scroll too. Wait, let me fix that. There we go. Where is it? There we go. Thanks to this one on Rockfin, Annie O. One thing we're missing in the migrant crisis is the recruiting deficit in the military and police force. If they're not connected to the community, police brutality could be even worse than it is now. Thank you for that one, Annie O.
Well said. All right. Yes, we are coming in hot for 2024. I got a lot of things planned this year, so stay tuned. It's going to be an interesting ride. Other than that, let's see you over at Call In. Link pinned to the top of the chat. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.